Hi, I'm Angus Kress Gillespie, your host for Old Ways in New Jersey here on East Brunswick Television. Today, we're doing a field trip. We're on Piscataway, New Jersey, and we're at the Cornelius House, which is a Middlesex County museum. But let me explain a little bit about the context here. Normally, when we're studying New Jersey history, we often quote Benjamin Franklin, who said, New Jersey is a barrel tapped at both ends, meaning at the northern end, you have the major city of New York, and at the southern end, you have the major city of Philadelphia. So the assumption of Benjamin Franklin's quotation is nothing much was happening in New Jersey. But as we will see today, that's far from the truth, because here, in this particular location, high on a bluff overlooking the Raritan River, we're here in Piscataway, New Jersey, and this particular location was called Raritan Landing, or Landing Lane, and this was an important source of commerce. Up until the time of the Revolutionary War, there was an active trade in grain. The ships would come up the Raritan River and offload. It was an active port. During the Revolutionary War, much of the port was destroyed. However, after the Revolutionary War, things bounced back. Now, all during this time in the 1700s, we have this house built by Cornelius, which overlooks the Raritan River, and it's a fascinating laboratory of the way things were back in the 1700s, and we're going to take a close look around at all 7 rooms. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Angus.
I understand we're here in the sitting room, and perhaps you can tell us a little bit about the architecture and the furnishings.
So the colors that we see here, the gray and the orange, are original to when Cornelius lived here in the 1700s. We know this because we scraped down 26 layers of paint when we did the restoration and had the first layer analyzed, and this is what they came up with. The fireplace was modernized in the 1820s to the popular Greek Revival style. The floors are original to when Cornelius lived here, but otherwise this room hasn't been touched too much over the centuries. The furniture, we're very lucky to have borrowed an awful lot of furniture from the Jersey Blue chapter of the DAR Buckaloo Mansion in New Brunswick. So most of what you see throughout this exhibit belongs to them. Unfortunately, we don't have anything that belonged to Mr. Lau. A lot of it was sold or it was passed down through the family and lost over the generations. So we do have some beautiful blue and white china. We do have pieces of silver. There's a silver cruet set over there, a silver dish over there, and then we've got various tea sets, this beautiful sofa, and then of course this beautiful secretary bookcase.
It's a fascinating room. The Greek Revival fireplace is appropriate for the 1820s. There was a revival of interest in Greece as a birthplace of democracy. Mm-hmm. And it's particularly interesting to see the china displayed with the orange background. It nicely sets off the blue and white china.
It does, it really does. You don't realize it until you start putting the blue and white china in there, how much it pops against the orange background.
And Katie, I was particularly fascinated with the floor, these extremely wide pine planks. I guess this was possible back in the day.
Yes, and they're only on this side of the house, upstairs and downstairs. There were replacement floors on the other side of the house and in the hallways, but these are the original floors on this side.
Thank you very much, Katie. Let's move on to the office and we'll take a look at what's going on there.
Okay.
Katie, we're here in what we assume is Cornelius Lau's office. He was a prosperous businessman. He was involved with the import and export business. Mm-hmm. He also had a warehouse at the foot of the hill here. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about this office.
Well, this is again some of the furniture that we borrowed from the DAR. We have a beautiful tiger maple desk in the corner there. And then this clock is particularly amazing. This is a clock that was completely created by two New Brunswick craftsmen during the time period. And the casing, the wood part, was made by Matthew Edgerton. And the silver part, the face, was made by Peter Lupp. So that's a particularly interesting and amazing piece of furniture. And then we've got the Durandal mirror over there, which has been quite popular with visitors and school children as well.
And Katie, can you tell us a little bit about the Delft tiles there on the fireplace?
Yes, we have 7 visible fireplaces in the house, 4 of which have Delft tiles, although you don't see them as much in this fireplace. They're more visible upstairs. These tiles are original to the house, and they're all religious scenes, and they were hand painted way back in the Netherlands in the 1700s.
Which makes sense because Cornelius Lau's background was from the Netherlands himself.
Yes, correct.
And we owe a debt of gratitude to the Daughters of the American Revolution for lending us this furniture.
Yes, these pieces are just amazing examples of craftsmanship, some of which are from the New Brunswick area.
Where should we go next?
Upstairs.
Okay. We've now moved upstairs, and most of the upstairs rooms are bedrooms, and this one has some particularly interesting furniture. Katie, can you explain what we're looking at?
Yes, we have some really cool things in this room. This chair, for example, is where George Washington sat when he visited Buccleuch Mansion. And I particularly like it because it's quite worn in some places, and you can see what they stuffed the chair with. So that's been interesting to point out to visitors and school children. Behind me, above the fireplace, is a portrait of Alice Halliburton Lau. That is Nicholas Lau's wife. And then behind me here on the wall, we've got some miniatures of 2 of Nicholas Lau's children, Henrietta and Nicholas Lau. So that was very interesting to be able to borrow such items from the family and put them into the exhibit. Yeah,
I understand Cornelius Lau was a distant relation of Alexander Hamilton.
Yeah, very, very, very sort of distant, sort of marriage, a cousin's son's wife, you know, that kind of a thing. Yeah. Not very close connection, yeah. But yes.
But they did some business together.
Oh, Nicholas did a lot of business with Alexander Hamilton. At one point, he lived next door to him in New York City. We know that from the 1800 census. But yeah, they were always in touch with each other. He received a lot of advice regarding the estates. In fact, we know from the estate papers that he wrote to Alexander Hamilton, and we saw that, you know, had to pay Alexander Hamilton and how much and all that.
Very interesting. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Katie, we're upstairs in what appears to be the master bedroom. Can you tell us a little bit about the furnishings?
We have a beautiful tiger maple bed here, and in the corner we've got a lovely commode stand. Then on the bed there is a bed warmer. It was typical in those days to warm the bed because it would be quite cold in a house, especially in the winter. So you wouldn't want to get into bed when it was freezing cold. So they would fill this part here with coals and then light it in the fire and then put it in the bed and just make the bed nice and warm before they got in. The wig stand is very interesting. That's where people would have put their wigs on to try and keep them very nice and, you know, not getting all ruined or smushed or whatever. I've never seen one before, and I think they're pretty rare. And again, this is one of the items that we borrowed from the DAR over at Buccleuch. So this has been a very popular item with many of the visitors. And in the corner there, we've got a lovely cabinet where they would put the chamber pot, which in those days was basically the inside toilet. So in the back over there, we've got a fire screen that was actually given by one of Mrs. Lau's relatives to Anthony White, who owned Buccleuch Mansion. And a fire screen was put by the fire to sort of deflect some of the heat if you were sitting next to it. And in the back is a very interesting document in that Mr. and Mrs. Lau both signed the document. So that was pretty rare during those times for a lady to actually sign a document. So I think that's very fascinating.
Katie, where are we going next?
Actually, I'm afraid I have to stop here, but you're going to go on into the other rooms with my coworker, Ken Helsby, who is the museum educator.
Okay, well, Katie, as a senior curator, thanks for showing us around.
My pleasure.
Okay. Hi, Ken.
Hi.
Okay, thanks for showing us around.
You're welcome.
We're in the upstairs, one of the upstairs bedrooms facing the front of the house. Tell us a little bit about the furnishings here.
Some of the furnishings, the main focal point of the furniture in this room is another Matthew Edgerton gaming table. Would have been used for gentlemen to play cards on, pull games out to play with the kids, but it's another one of his signed and labeled pieces. He was a famous furniture maker and cabinet maker here in New Brunswick.
Very nice local association.
Yes.
Let's take a look over at the fireplace over
Sure.
here. Now, if I'm not mistaken, here we're looking at the applique. It appears that the young man is kissing the young lady.
Yes, that's a very good observation. Right there is that one. And then on this side, you have the girl slapping him.
So apparently his advances were not welcome.
Or she slapped him and she felt bad about it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I like your interpretation better. Now, I don't think this is the original paint here on this applique.
No, this is one of the rooms that in the house that was not repainted during our 1995 restoration, the original paint colors. And that was mainly because of this fireplace mantle that we think was probably put on in the early 19th century, 1820 or so. So this color through the paint analysis actually represents the fourth or the fifth painting of this room.
So you didn't go all down to the 26th layer.
Didn't go down all the way in this room, no.
Yeah. And I was admiring the Delft tiles on the fireplace, but if I'm not mistaken, I observed a mistake here.
Yeah, the fireplace actually represents one of the ways that the fireplaces were reconfigured over the 275 years of the house's existence. And when they put in the angled fire back and they took off some of the Delft tiles, they put them back on, and the lower left-hand corner one they actually put on, we think probably by mistake, but upside down.
Ah, too bad.
Too bad.
Ken, let's move on to the final bedroom in the back of the house.
Come with me, I'll show you.
Okay, thanks. So Ken, we have here a miniature of Gertrude Lau. I understand she actually lived in this house.
Yes, she was one of Cornelius Lau's youngest daughters.
And she was born in 1748.
Yes, yes. And she married one of the Wallace brothers from New Brunswick, two prominent businessmen, loyalists in New Brunswick. And she followed her husband over to England, where they settled and remained the rest of their lives.
So she never came back?
Never came back. So this is actually, with this portrait, this is actually the first time that Gertrude's been in the house since she left.
Very interesting. She was a loyalist, so she didn't stay for the revolution.
No, no. She got out with her husband.
Okay.
We have some pieces of furniture, again, that we were able to borrow from the Daughters of the American Revolution over in New Brunswick at the Bucklew Mansion. A side table and dressing mirror from the mid-1700s. The dressing mirror is actually older than the table that sits on it. We have a baby's cradle that we also borrowed from the DAR. And the one thing that's unique about the high chair over there is what we may notice looking at it from our modern eyes is that there's a drastic lack of safety precautions on the baby's high chair. So no other straps other than the handrails that the baby sat in to eat with the family.
And tell us about the mannequin.
The mannequin is dressed in a period woman's dress. It's not an original piece. It is a reproduction that we had made for one of our traveling trunks that we have go out with a former program of ours. But one thing it does illustrate is it's very easy to understand why it took a village to dress the woman. Lots of layers, need lots of help to pull and cinch everything in place and get all the layers in their proper order.
Well, the family had slaves and indentured servants to help with these things.
They did.
Ken, here we are in the very last room of our television tour. This is the dining room. Perhaps you tell us a little bit about the furnishings here.
Sure, and in fact, we actually are in what was the dining room of the Cornelius Lau house. It had access to the kitchen that was removed in the early 1870s or early 1880s. Some of the furniture that we have in there, we have a sideboard that was from about 1811 that was used to keep dining room accoutrements, materials, plates, cups, and liquor. So each one of the vertical drawers in that cabinet holds 5 bottles of wine, and there's a lock on it for a very specific reason. You don't want that leaving your ownership.
Yeah. Well, you had slaves and indentured servants who,
Sure.
who would have gladly partaked if they had the chance.
And guests, it was
Yeah.
all lock and key.
Yeah.
We also have a plate warmer in this room, one that would have stacked plates, and I guess you would put it by the fireplace to warm the plates up, so as you serve the food would stay warm. We have another wine cabinet, and we also have a food warmer, so you might put plates in with food and actually put it near the fireplace to keep the food warm.
It's what appears to be a tea table decorated with floral painting with 4 Windsor chairs.
Yes, exactly. And the chairs didn't originally go with that table, but they are from the same time period. They're both from around 1800.
You know, Ken, we're very fortunate here in Middlesex County to have a county museum. It's not every county in the land that has its own museum.
No, definitely not. The Middlesex County Board of Chosen Freeholders made the decision in 1979 to acquire the museum from the last owners of the house, Stephen and Mimi Strong. And it's been their vision ever since to have it run as a local history museum that tells different stories of New Jersey history. So we very much appreciate the support of the Board of Chosen Freeholders. They treat us very well.
And the museum serves a function with Middlesex County schools.
Yes, we have school tours available, free of charge, as are all of our programs since we are county funded. So we're available for teachers of 4th grade and up. We've done senior groups and scout groups and everybody in between. So our exhibit tours are about an hour or so, hour and a half, depending on the time limit constraints of the school or the group. And we'll talk about the exhibit, we'll talk about the house, and give them a good introduction to local history.
That's a wonderful project. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
We're here in front of the Lau House. This is the facade, and it's very interesting. This house was built with 350 tons of sandstone, but the interesting thing to me is that the front, the facade, the part that faces the river, has these wonderful, expensive pieces of cut sandstone. But if we walk around the house, we observe a number of interesting things. For example, you look over here, take a look at this window. It's actually crooked because over time the house has settled. And when they restored the house, they left it that way, which indicates the antiquity of this house. Now let's move around to the side. And it's very interesting. We move around to the side and we see, although Cornelius Lau was a very proud man with his facade, over here on the side of the house, which people wouldn't see, he did not use the expensive cut stone. He simply used the rubble. Another very interesting thing, if you look at this wall very carefully, you can see the ghost of the kitchen wing, which was removed later on in the 1800s, but you can see where it used to be attached to the building. So in the front you have the very expensive cut sandstone. Here it's merely rubble. So although Cornelius Lau was a proud man, he was also a very thrifty man. Thank you for joining us on Old Ways in New Jersey here on East Brunswick Television. This afternoon we had a nice tour of the Cornelius Lau House in Piscataway, New Jersey, which is a museum of the Middlesex County and a fine example of an 18th century manor house. Please join us next time as we continue our investigation of old ways in New Jersey.